All right. Good afternoon from Coach Smith and Love the Game 24/7 with Coach Smith. We are live on this day afternoon, and I'm just giving a little bit of time for some people to hop on. I'm on IG, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on my YouTube channel. Love the Game 24_7. I appreciate you guys joining me. I know in a lot of ways, people are probably busy watching some of their favorite NFL teams, and you're either celebrating today because your college team won, or you're sobbing because your college team lost, like that Alabama-Georgia game that was just crazy last night, but very enjoyable watching. It was tight. And so I just want to thank you guys for joining me briefly here on today's podcast. Do my best to keep it, as I always do, not too long. But I thank you guys for joining the Love the Game 24/7 podcast audience that is growing each and every day. So I appreciate you guys getting the word out on helping young athletes and their parents. Still got my games on, helping young athletes and parents through the recruiting process, because it can be taxing, it can be very overwhelming, it can be very difficult, disappointing. It can be a lot of that, but it can also be exciting, right? Very fulfilling, intense, great exposure, all those good things, great relationships as well. And so Love the Game 24/7 and Coach Smith, we're all about trying to help you navigate through that process, how to increase your opportunities to be recognized for athletic scholarships in your sport. Even though I always say I talk a lot about football and track and field, what I always participated in as a kid growing up. I also did basketball, so I talk about that. But it doesn't matter if female, what sport you play, recruiting is recruiting. And you can learn something from our discussions I've had and interviews I've had. I have more of those coming up. I just connected with a good friend from college, Bob Protexter, back home is I should say back in my home of where I played college sports, football, and ran track at Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa. I know Bob Protester has a huge background in baseball. He played baseball there. His father was a coach for almost 30 years in baseball. He's very knowledgeable. And so I'm excited about getting him, as well as several others as well. I'm working on getting Coach Levitt. I got to run him down and check his availability. I'm going to get Coach Doach. I got to run him down and check his availability. There were college coaches who did the recruiting that can talk about their experiences as head coaches and, assistant coaches when they were on the recruiting trail, because all that still hasn't changed. Recruiting is recruiting. And so we want to help you guys do that through this podcast and give you some personal, right, personal information from those who've been through it and done it, from on the playing side as well as coaches and players who went through it as players, and some of them are coaching now. So we're going to do all of that. I got to run down to Cole Tunsil again to try to get her scheduled before her basketball season gets started back home at Lakewood High School. But let's make sure we're in prayer for the North Carolinians up here that got hit by the remnants of Hurricane Helene, as well as back home in Florida, my main stopping ground where I got a lot of family. That area, St. Petersburg, was hit real hard. And so some devastation and people being misplaced because their homes they lived for many years were destroyed. And so let's be in prayer, dedicate this show and be in prayer for some of my folks back home in Florida and here in North Carolina where I reside now. They also need prayer, especially the Asheville area. People have lost power, water, those things, and there's a lot of help. A lot of people are giving of themselves and heading down to Florida and heading up here to North Carolina and Nashville area to help out as well in the mountains. And so let's keep those folks in prayer. I appreciate it. And so you subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to your left. Also, be sure you just, go out and view some of the videos I've already done and spoke on the recruiting process to help you young athletes and your parents get through this. So be sure you follow me on Coach Smith 27 on my Instagram, on IG. And you can also follow me, Love the Game 24, Love the Game 27 on my IG as well. I have those two different IG accounts where I talk about recruiting and all those good things and giving out great information to help you guys increase your opportunities to receive some exposure and recognition in your sport, teaching you some of the things that you need to be doing from a training perspective, whether it be lifting weights or running, or whether it be drills that you can do. I've done personal coaching. I do those types of things as well. I have done those things. Coached for over 12 years, football, and about 4 or 5 years in track and field at the high school level. So, and right now, starting my first year refereeing here in North Carolina, and I'm enjoying it and loving it. And it really has been fulfilling and doing something different in sports as I do some refereeing in this area and seeing what the area is looking like in football here. Also going to be working on getting my certification to referee as basketball as well. So I'm working on those things to improve myself, improve my knowledge and perspective of the game. And so, as I said, I played football from the age of 7 until I was 28, 29 years old, college, Division II, undrafted free agent with the Houston Oilers, arena football, semi-pro ball, did all of those things. So I've been around the game pretty much all my life from the age of 7. And so I've been around it for quite some time. And like I said, I had 2 sons, one who fell in love with the game himself. My oldest played, both my boys played football and baseball growing up. They did basketball as well a little bit growing up, youth league, church league, all those things. And so the importance of using your gifts and talents to help you get your education and experience and building relationships, having another family in your athletics, which is always great to have, and just enjoying that experience is always good for young boys and young girls to experience that. And so I have that experience, with an older son playing major college Power 5 football as a quarterback and then receiver, and now in the NFL as well. And looking to go on year 6. So I have that, as a subject matter expert in this field of athletic recruiting for sports. And I try to bring on others that I know who know just as much, if not more than me, and are very happy to share their experience and their knowledge because they have seen me doing some of these videos. Friends have shared it with other friends that are coaching and all those different things, and make that with folks. And I appreciate that, and looking to just expound and expand and growing this platform, this podcast, to help out as much as possible to alleviate, making mistakes or bad decisions or anything, and more than anything, trying to help you recognize how to go about this and help yourself. And so that's what this podcast is all about with Coach Smith and Love the Game 24/7. And so I'm excited and look forward to doing it each and every time I get on here and sharing some things that I've seen that is going on in the sports world. I don't care if it's WNBA with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Asia, all those wonderful ladies, and many more that have just made the game even more exciting to watch as we start to play. The playoffs have started, and also Major League Baseball, all those things with my Rays, and hockey with the Tampa Bay Lightning, my team, right? And so let's get this started. Today's, I got a couple of things. Today's subject was, my exposure to the Pop Warner, because I didn't play Pop Warner, neither did my kids play Pop Warner. we played like local little league football. And I had my kids do that same thing like I did growing up. So we had, we had the Pop Warner League going on, and we had the Little League, which was tied to a lot of the high schools. So a lot of the teams in the Little League that I played in, and I had my kids play in, were associated with the local high schools. So their uniforms looked like the local high schools. Now, then if those teams had a lot more players at different age groups, they would, look like they would have uniforms that looked like the pro teams to, differentiate between, you know, three teams at the same age group, because they just had a bunch of kids at that same age group and they couldn't put them all on one team. They had to split them up into maybe two or three, maybe four teams. It just depends. And so, but the main team would always look like the high school, or let's say, for lack of a better term, the better players were like be considered a varsity team, the smallest kids. And then they would have other teams that they would spread out some of the talent to try to be as fair as possible. But that's how our little league association. It was called the PYFC, Pinellas Youth Football Club, or Youth Football League. And so that's what we had. And then I think the Pop Warner wasn't that big in our area, especially in Pinellas County. I can't speak so much for Hillsborough, but I think they had it and it was a little bit bigger. But now, as my kids were coming out of Little League football, the Pop Warner influence had grown considerably. So I had a lot of my nephews who played Pop Warner, and so that's how it has grown in our area. The Pop Warner visibility has truly grown back home in our area, but it's big up here in North Carolina. And so I have an opportunity to be a referee. I get to see a lot, from the teams, the coaching standpoint, the discipline of teams, whether they're well coached or not. You see how the interaction with coaches and parents is just has gotten kind of, I guess I would say, intensified a lot compared to when my kids were growing up. I mean, we had some of that as well when my kids were growing up. I don't recall a lot of that so much. We did have some when I was growing up, but not to the level of where I see it today with some of the little league sports. And it's not just football. As I talk to some of these referees who have been doing it for 20, 30 something years, they have shared that there is a distinct difference today than what it was when they started refereeing, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And a lot of these refs that I have the blessing of being around are not only little league referees or middle school or high school referees, but they're also college referees, and some have even gone on to the pro level. And I've met a lot of these gentlemen who, I've had the blessing to glean from in this short period of time, and continue to have the blessing of learning from a lot of these gentlemen who've been in the game of refereeing and who genuinely love the game, whether it be football or basketball. A lot of them are doing lacrosse and other sports, soccer. They do a lot of different sports, and they do it for the love of sport, for the love of the game, no matter what sport it is. But that's why I say love the game 24/7, because I'm not just talking about one specific sport. And just life in general. You got to, love the game. And so I appreciate you, Florida Beach Boy, joining me on IG. And, if you got any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to make sure I peek. For those who may have questions, I've received questions and things before during the podcast, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that may come up during the podcast. So, but be sure you go to my YouTube channel, Love the Game, at Love the Game 24_7. Whether you're watching this live or the recording, share it with those who have young people who are playing sports, boy or girl, young man, young lady, to help them in their recruiting to get all the knowledge that they can as they go through this process. And we want to start this thing early, as I always say. Definitely by middle school, you need to be doing something to help your young person get recruited. And it's not something that you need to, panic about or be so intense about. Like I said, with this youth league today and Pop Warner and other sports, I just tell you one thing I have kind of noticed over the last several weeks, and I noticed this as a spectator when I just go to games, even when I was coaching myself. Um, and and now I see certain things where some of these teams I've seen a few that they're disciplined, but a lot of them aren't well coached. I see a lot of young kids, but they're not well coached. There needs to and then sometimes you got kids, coaches, 3 or 4 coaches yelling at the kid, trying to put it in the right position, and there's too many people talking to the kid, and the kid is trying to decide we should be listening to his head coach, his position coach, or who am I listening to? Who? And everybody's yelling and screaming, trying to give instructions. But let me back up a little bit and just let you know that hats off to every one of these coaches who take their time, whether they have kids out there or not. Because for a time when my kids stopped playing little league sports, I still would coach a little bit, even though I was coaching at high school. I would go to my kids' um, little league practice when they were transitioning, getting ready to transition out of little league into high school. So I wanted to get my experience coaching high school before they got there. So hats off to these coaches who do take their time from their families and different things of that nature, and they should be applauded. Well, I don't care how good or bad of a coach they are, they don't have to be out there. They're not getting paid for this. They do it because they do love it. Okay. Um, but one thing that I realized when I was coaching is, and I appreciate my high school coach that taught me, Coach Davis back at CCC. You got to go to some coaching clinics, right? Um, I know there's several out there. Glazier is one of the biggest ones. They go nationwide. Coaches, you got to invest in yourself. If you really love the game just as much as we want to tell our kids to buy into the system and buy into the program, to help themselves be better as a coach. If you're serious about it and you really want, and even if you want to, go to high school or go to the college level, you have to invest in yourselves. Too many times I see coaches who want to come up with, you know, plays on offense and try to be too fancy or too sexy with some of their plays, even at a young age with some of these kids. And some of the kids' attention spans are not that long. So you got that you have to deal with as well. And there's a lot going on in a lot of these young kids' lives, these young boys and young girls' lives. And you want it to be a healthy place for them to come to and get away from some of all this stress and things that are going on in some of these young people, these young kids' lives, because there's a lot going on today. Um, People don't realize that it is. It's a lot going on today, and these kids need all the help that they can get from us adults, responsible or so-called responsible adults. And we need to do that. We need to be responsible and do our part to help these young boys and young girls have a great experience in playing a game that they love as well. And we want to give them an experience that they'll never forget, in a good way and not a bad way, because all the craziness that can go on sometimes at some of these youth sports. And sometimes, these kids are only saying or responding or repeating things that they've heard their coaches say or parents say. And one thing, my wife and I always tried to do a good job of is not saying certain things about other adults around our kids. Were we perfect in doing it? No. But very seldom did we say or complaints, or if we did catch ourselves doing that, we we say, we need to shut that down because we don't want our kids to have a bad idea or bad thought of um, an adult, whether it be a teacher, coach, or whoever it may be. So it's important for coaches for you to invest in yourselves. So not just in play calling on offense and defense and trying to do all these different things, but be sure that if you want these young people to listen and understand what you're saying, you can't have everybody talking at one time. You can't have multiple people saying some things to a young person when you're trying to get them to understand and direct them on the field, especially during a game. Some of this stuff should already have been done, for however many days that you practice during the week, 2 or 3 days, whatever it is. Okay. You're out there for 2 or 3 hours with these kids, 2 or 3 days out of the week, because we know they have school. Now, when I was growing up, we practiced every day for at least 2 hours. That's just the way it was when I grew up. And we loved it, enjoyed it when I was playing Little League football. But one thing I can say that my father, that I can remember growing up, they took the time to teach us the proper way of tackling. You would have to run laps if they caught you tackling leading with your helmet. So we didn't have the issues with people targeting. Did it happen sometimes? Yeah, very seldom did it happen because we were well coached during the off-season training, to be sure we were taught properly about how to tackle. And as you went up each level, there was always time in practice, especially preseason before the season even started. That was one thing they always focused on, was the basics. Pretty much going back over, making sure they went over the basics and making sure we understood. And as we went up to, got older and you graduated to the next level, of Little League football, you knew some things, what to do and what not to do. And you knew what some coaches weren't going to put up with as you got, they held you to a higher standard as you went up a level, right, of responsibility and knowing what you were supposed to do and expected you to do certain things. My mom and dad never put my equipment together for me. And I can say that even from elementary school. I always followed one of my older brothers and had my gear and everything prepared myself. All right, mom may have washing things, but after a while, by the time I got in late elementary, early middle school, we were washing our own clothes and hanging them on the clothesline. For you all know, kind of aging myself. We had clotheslines. We didn't have a dryer. We had a washing machine, but we didn't have a dryer. That came a little bit later as I got older. But still, even when we got a dryer put in our home, it wasn't something that you used all the time. Like on a regular basis, it was, hey, certain things mom would let you put in the dryer. Otherwise, go out there on those clotheslines out there and hang up those clothes, right? And so that was the responsibility that we had as kids, and putting our own uniform together, putting our jerseys on our shoulder pads and making sure you had everything. And then, when you are taught that way, you learn to be responsible and make sure you have everything. Very seldom would I forget, you know, how I wanted to look on Saturdays for games, how good I want to look. We always say that term. We've always known that you look good, you play good. I always wanted to look good so I could play good. And so, but as I was saying with some of this coaching, it's not, hats off to the coaches and to those ones who do a good job of coaching, because I've seen some teams that are very well disciplined and well coached. I have seen that. And I've seen, as I saw yesterday with the 12U team, one team was obviously better athletic wise overall, but not well coached. And so the team who didn't have as much athletic talent on the team, because they were more well coached and more disciplined. And very seldom did you hear too many coaches yelling and screaming from the sideline. Every now and then you did from that well coached disciplined team, but very seldom. It may have been one or two people. All right. But on the other sideline with the better players, there were more coaches yelling and screaming, trying to get, calls in, or trying to line a young kid up and where he was supposed to be, or subbing somebody in, and, different things. And the kids are getting, very obviously up, just stressed or irritated or bothered because they, not understanding what the coach wanted at times. And I remember myself yesterday telling one of the, it was I think it was 12 and under team, that second game I coached. I told a young man, there was a tight end lined up, but he was way out at his cornerback position as if a wide receiver was out there. And so I let it go for about a quarter, and I'm saying to myself, and this is the second time I've coached this team, and the young man is out there playing cornerback with no wide receiver out there. He's way too wide where I am as a ref, and there's not a receiver. And he needs to be tighter, either head up or outside shaded of the tight end and 4 or 5 yards back, so he can read whether the tight end is going down the block for a run, or if that tight end releases, he needs to be dropping his zone or guard the tight end if it's a man situation. And so I explained it to the young man that, hey, if you don't have a wide receiver out here, there's no reason for you to be way out here almost where I am. You need to be closer to that tight end, because they keep running to your side, because there's a huge gap of run space, and your linebackers need help, and you got to be there to help as a cornerback. And so after I shared that with the young man, he started lining up. He said to me, I can see everything better from there now. I said, yep, absolutely you can. And I said, when you read run, if that tight end steps down, you make sure it's a run. You put your eyes in the backfield and make sure it's a run play, that the quarterback handed that ball off. And you get in there and fit and keep, and don't let anything get outside of you. You make everything go inside you, whether you make the tackle or you make the person run inside where all your buddies are. And he did that, and he wasn't a kid afraid to tackle. He was very, good kid. And he thanked me. Oh, thank you, Mr. Ref, for telling me that. And then I went ahead and even told the coach after one time out. I said, this kid been lining up men out here with no wide receiver, and you guys haven't even corrected him the whole game to get down, over the tight end. But just something as simple as that gets missed. But that young man should know that, or that coach should have called it well before I did, to correct the young man, to tell him to get over the tight end to be able to make plays. Or also teaching the kid what the difference between man coverage is, because a touchdown was scored on this team because the kid was guarding a wide receiver, and when he saw the quarterback scramble to his left, the offensive right side, the quarterback scrambled and threw a touchdown pass to his receiver that he initially was guarding, but when he saw the quarterback scrambling and rolling to his side, he ran up to go try to make the play. And so these kids and coaches, especially, you got to understand, by the time these kids get to high school, these coaches want them to already have been taught that. Of course, we're going to, at high school, we're going to go over that stuff. And I used to have to tell kids when I coached high school football over the years, where I can see when they came from youth league, that they weren't coached well and disciplined, knowing what the difference between man and what the difference between zone is. So that's why it's important for some of them, even though I don't care how talented they are, if they don't understand the basics of man coverage or zone coverage and where they're supposed to be, whether they're a linebacker or a DB, right, or a wide receiver, understanding when he's in man coverage and what he's supposed to do, these are some things that you need to be teaching these kids, when they're in middle school, so they can even be more successful. And so that's what's a little upsetting to me, because that was, because we were taught that when I was young, coming up. We were taught those different things. And so you were aware, whether you were great at doing it or not, you understood what zone coverage is, cover 3, cover 2, what man coverage, where your eyes are on the receiver and not peeking in the backfield, seeing what the quarterback is doing. That's what zone coverage is. Zone coverage is you're dropping back and you're not keeping your eyes, you're using your peripheral vision, right? I can see my TV on right here, even though I'm not looking directly at it. I'm using my peripheral vision where I can see this Minnesota and Green Bay game that's on right now on my TV while I'm doing this podcast that you guys can't see. So I'm very aware of that's what zone coverage is when you're a DB, especially if you're a cornerback. You drop back in your zone coverage, right? If it's cover 2, you're that 10 to 12 flat area, and then maybe 15 yards, 12 to 10 to 15 yards, and you try to catch, you try to bait the quarterback sometimes, and you can sink back if you see a play coming your way, like a deep out route or a deep post flat, you might do post and bend it to a flat route. If the free safety plays it well and takes the flag post or the flag route from it, you can flatten it out, and then you can bait the quarterback as a cornerback, and you can drop back to help your safety out to try to cover that when you see the quarterback is not throwing it in that shallow, right, area in your zone. And then cover 3, you tell the cornerbacks you have a third of the field from the sideline to the hash, right? And then the free safety has inside the hashes. And the other cornerback on the opposite side has the hash mark to that sideline. We're all covering thirds of the football field, right? When we're in cover 3 zone, right? As opposed to, covering like half when we're in cover 2, right? Because we know in the cover 2, the 2 high safeties have half the football field, deep half of the football field. They have from the goal post, if you have a goal post in the center of the field, to the sideline, each safety. And they're usually sitting right on the hash marks or just inside the hash marks or slightly outside the hash marks, depending upon, if there's 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on the field. Okay, and then you bring in extra cornerbacks and take out a linebacker potentially when you get a team that throws the ball a lot, right? So you try to teach your kids by the time they're in middle school to understand these basics of football, right, on the defensive side. Okay, and then same thing goes if you're on the offensive side, you're running backs and tight ends and all those different things, and you teach, different things that you need to teach to your running backs. How to, the hop step, how to cut, how to bounce and stay low to the ground and keep your feet and keep your balance. so you can take off quick as soon as your feet hit that ground. Teach kids how to use their peripheral vision, that when somebody falls, they shouldn't be so easily tripped up. That's why we used to do the bag drills as running backs and wide receivers with high knees, right? That's why we did certain drills like that. So when you get in the game, you're not tackled by the first or second person that touches you or tries to trip you up, right? I used to do drills because that's what was taught to me growing up. Trip you up to see how well you can keep your balance, how you put one hand down, right? Or how to switch the ball close to your body so you don't lose it and fumble it. And also when you get in the crowd as a running back, you make sure you cover it up with both hands and give them your shoulder pads and you keep your head up, right? So you can avoid getting hit in your helmet, and you let them hit your shoulders first, and let them hit you in your arms, but you keep that ball covered up. These are different things that we were taught as kids. And I don't see a lot of this stuff being taught to the kids a lot of times. Now, granted, these kids are much more athletic and athletically talented because of parents like ourselves teaching our kids things at a younger age that my kids learned in the home from me, because I had that experience. Everybody's not growing up with that, but when I coached my kids and I coached other kids in Little League, I made sure I taught them things like that, or even spoke to the parents or dad or mom about that, or tell the kid, hey, get in the mirror and do certain things, and hop and do different things and work on that stuff and look at yourself and keep you and learn how to, so you don't drop your head when you're running back. Get in the mirror and home and hop and try to keep your balance and switch the football, right? Learn how to switch the football and then catch your balance and do things like that. But tell them to get in the mirror and look in the mirror to teach them, hey, you got to be able to see yourself. So, but you also got to be able to see how to step over that bag, how to step over that player. Step over that bag is just like you stepping over a player in an actual game, right? So you learn how to keep your knees run with high knee action, so you're not so easily tripped up as a running back or wide receiver or quarterback. You do those drills, right? So those are different things that these coaches can do a better job of. But one of the main things they need to do is designate who's going to give instruction when the team is on defense, who's going to give instruction when the team is on offense. But most importantly, work on these things before the game better. That's what I see needs to happen. And so, like I said, that team won yesterday 33-19 over a much more athletically talented team because they were better coached and they were well disciplined. They didn't talk back too much to the referees like the other team did, but that's because they probably see coaches in practices and at games where it's not as much as that going on that more disciplined and well-coached team, as opposed to the team that wasn't that well-coached and not as disciplined, right? And so as a parent, you got to be sure you take the time to, before you sign your kid up for a Little League athletic club or team, you need to go view some of these games. So while you got a child growing up playing some flag before they even play any tackle, even if they play flag, I went out and did an assessment with my kids before my kids got into Little League sports, back to my old Little League team and other places to see where I'm going to have my kids play. I would go to high school games to see, okay, now I knew Coach Davis, if he was still coaching, where I was going to take him. But I also made sure I went to some of his games. And like I said, I got him to coaching and started coaching with him as well, which was a blessing. But as a parent, you got to do your due diligence. You got to do your research. Find out who are the good coaches out here, right? And coaches, you got to be careful that you're not showing favoritism, to just your kids that are being coached. I made sure I didn't show favoritism just to my son when I was coaching Little League sports or high school sports. No, I didn't show him any favoritism, because it's not right for those other kids to miss on getting developed, like they deserve to get developed as well. So as parents, you got to assess those types of things. This organization, a good organization, is there a lot of, nonsense going on with, some of the parents and some of the coaches, yelling and screaming, or, there are too many coaches yelling and trying to give an instruction, and you're getting mad with a kid because he didn't understand, because there's 3 or 4 of you guys trying to say something. And you can't have that. Okay, they got enough of stuff going on, people yelling at them and screaming at them, maybe at home, for some of these kids. I know, because I worked with criminal youth for over 8 years, boys and girls. So I know what some of these kids in some of these homes. I work with troubled youth counseling from Baltimore, D.C. area to Florida, back home in Florida. So I know some of these kids They're innocent. They're only doing what they've been shown, right? And we as parents, as coaches, got to do a better job, right? And so if people are trusting you as a coach to train and teach their kids, they've invested and paid money for this youth program, then you need to take it a lot more serious, right? On how we're conducting ourselves as coaches when we're out on that field, guiding these young minds, influencing and these young impressionable minds. We got to be serious about it. We got to take it a lot more serious. It's about trying to help them, give them the great experience. And as a parent, you got to be responsible. If there's some nonsense going on with this organization, you may want to change and let them go play somewhere else, right? For another club or another team. It's that serious, because I don't want my kid just out there with anybody. I took that serious. I didn't want just anybody coaching my kids or saying certain things, when my kids are young. I know there's going to be a cuss word here, there, this and that. They got to learn how to deal with some of that stuff as well. And I made sure I had conversations with my kids about stuff like that. But I took it serious enough. I didn't want anybody, kids, hearing me say certain things like that. So you didn't hear me say it in my private life like that. And so it wasn't an issue with me not saying it in public like that either, when it came to being around kids and things like that. To me, that's just a no-no. We got to, I'm going to be held responsible, for what I say and do around young kids. So let's just remember that as adults, that we be more responsible, especially as coaches. Don't just get caught up in wanting to teach your next new play designs and all this other stuff that you want to do. Appreciate you guys joining me. I see you, Sean. I appreciate it. But let's be sure, coaches, that you do a better job in getting information to your young people. You do a better job in coaching your kids up during the week, right? Explaining things to them. And sometimes you got to do a little extra, right? You got to stay after practice, okay? And give a little extra time to certain kids. But let's be sure we, like I said, hats off to you, but let's make sure you do a better job of coaching the sport so that the kids love the game and don't resent the game, right? That they appreciate the game. They appreciate you more as a coach because you did take that time out and not yell at them all the time. I'm not saying you're not going to get on them and, correct them, but sometimes you can tell a kid, hey, man, remember when I showed you this? This is what I'm talking about. You got to tighten up, right? I went over this with you. I explained, these things to you, but one of the greatest things that I got out of coaching is when I honed it into a kid and tell them, hey, I don't coach that. That's not what I coached you this week, is it? No, coach. My kids said, no, coach, that's not what. No, I didn't. I didn't coach you that. I told you in man all week. And we're gonna make our mistakes early in the week, and we're gonna correct them by the end of the week and make them make less mistakes as we get to the end of the week to get ready to play on Friday night. And so when I saw a kid do something, I would remind him, hey, do you recall me coaching that to you? Is that the technique that I coached you when we're in man coverage? Or when we're in cover 3? I told you as a cornerback, you have deep thirds. What does deep mean? Deep thirds mean you're deep. You have no business coming up in here. They call you secondary for a reason, right? And why do they call you secondary? Because you're secondary to the run, right? You're primary to the passing game, but you're secondary to the run. So that's why we call you secondary, right? And so explain that to the kids. This is why when you're a DB or a free safety, you don't come up for a run. If you don't see that quarterback pass that line of scrimmage, he can pump fake and do all that stuff you want to. Make sure when you get out on the football field, you know where the line of scrimmage is and you know where the first down marker is. Same thing I would tell a wide receiver or running back, because if I see a wide receiver, we need 12 yards. I know we've been in practice running this yard at 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 yards, and we need 12 yards. You better get me 13. That means you better come off that ball a little bit faster and get a little bit deeper, right? So we don't throw off our timing too much, because we need a first down because it's 3rd and 13. But you ain't gonna tell me, well, coach, you said we run this route at 12 yards, but I also explained when it's 3rd and long and I need more than 12 yards, I need you to get them 13. I need you to know where the first down marker is located, right? And when you do that and you coach that way, it's going to get embedded in those kids. And when you see them do it on the football field and you remind them, boy, hey, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I coach. You did what I coached you all week. You got that first down. You got off the ball. You got a little deeper than them 12 yards and make sure we got that first down. And that's what I coach. And you remind them, you give them, you encourage them, you give them that that okay, that yep, that's what I coach. You did exactly what I've been coaching you all season, all week long. And that's the enjoyment that you really get out of it as a coach when you see them grow up throughout the season and they start getting it more and more, and they go out and make a play. You know, like a DB, when I told him, I said he made the mistake of coming up and somebody threw a deep pass to his receiver because he thought the guy was running. He thought the quarterback was running. I'm like, what coverage were we in? First thing I asked him, cover three. On cover three, what's your job? Deep thirds. Where was your man? He was deep thirds. Where were you? Up here trying to tackle the quarterback because he's scrambling. I thought he was running. Is that your job? No, that's not my job, coach. Okay. So I would remind him, now you don't want to be over here holding the clipboard next to me because you can't remember what I told you when we're in cover three. Do your job. Don't try to do somebody else's job. Do your job. Your job was not to allow that deep touchdown pass to be caught because you weren't where you were supposed to be doing your job. Let everybody else who's supposed to be up there in cover three, that linebacker, you know, those D linemen, let them be up there trying to do that. That's on them if that quarterback gets by them. Now you come up and help make the tackle once, you know, because deep thirds, you should be looking at the quarterback and using your peripheral vision. But if you get back deep enough and not let that receiver get deeper than you, you'll be able to see the quarterback and the wide receiver at the same time. Because I got back in my back pedal and I turned my hips and my shoulders, right? My back to the sideline. I'm outside I'm you know, the middle of the from the hash to the sideline. I'm in the middle of that. I'm in between the middle of from the hash line to the sideline, so I could see as much as possible and keep my eyes on the quarterback to see what he's doing while I'm using my peripheral vision, seeing where these wide receivers are splitting up and if anybody's coming in my zone outside the hash. And if I get deep enough, then I'll be able to see when I need to come up and help make the tackle. If the quarterback runs past and goes over the line of scrimmage, and now I'll come up as a secondary tackler to the run. And so I don't see enough of that, you know, on the defensive side. And then when I look on offense, certain things where, you know, blocking at different positions, I see kids not hustling, getting out of the huddle as wide receivers and hurry up and get lined up, you know, not checking with the ref, you know, and teaching kids, if you're a wide receiver, there's no reason why you should jump off sides. You don't even need to know the count, to be honest. You just need to know the play. And you need to look inside, find out, see what coverage the defense is in, look inside, see with your peripheral vision where the DB is while you're looking inside when the ball is snapped. When the ball is snapped, that's when you move. Every wide receiver should would tell you that. I don't even need to know the count. Just tell me to play. I'll get out there and get lined up early so I can see what coverage the defense is in, and then I'll look inside, continue to use my peripheral vision and checking and watching the ball, and I'm gonna move when the ball moves. That's what I would teach my wide receivers. You move when the ball moves. You already know what time it is, what route you're running. You already know the play. You already assessed because you ran out there and got to out of the huddle and got lined up, so you can assess and see what kind of coverage you got. If it's 2 high safety or 1 high safety, or if it's man free, or if it's man with 2 high safeties, right? And you already know your responsibility that when it's cover 2, you better get an outside release on that cornerback and don't let him flush you. Don't let him push you inside, especially if you got a second a number 2 wide receiver inside of you that has to do a route coming on an out, right? And you're helping the cornerback play both of you by pushing you inside as a number 1, and then he can see what number 2 is doing. No, you better get an outside release on that cover 2 cornerback, because all that cornerback job is to do is just to push you outside and jump back in his 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 yard zone coverage and keep his eyes on the shallow area. And he's trying to help get you off your track for running your route to slow you down for the free safety back there. So you heard him get a release, an outside release on that cornerback so he can't peek inside and see what's coming, right? With a timing route that may be coming in his zone, in his cover 2 zone area, right? So I don't see a lot of that being taught, especially at 12, right? 12 and up. Okay, so that's what I noticed that some of these coaches got to do a better job of, and also be sure to do a better job and not having 3 or 4 people, trying to give instructions to a kid to get them lined up right. Okay, work on that stuff, coaches. But once again, thank you for sacrifice, because I've been there and done that and know the kind of sacrifice you're making, right? But I also know there's some people that shouldn't be coaching. I know that, or the organization needs to do a better job in supporting the coaches, making sure they go to some sort of clinics, those types of things, to help them be better coaches from people who've been coaching for years, longer than they've been alive. Okay, and learn different techniques and ways of coaching. Help these kids remember plays and different things about where they're supposed to be, knowing their position. There's things out there that can help you be a better coach, right? And so I hope this is, whether you listen to this live or the recording, that this is taken to heart as a coach, that if you really love the game and you really love trying to shape young boys and girls' mind in your sport, at the youth level and at the high school level, and beyond, that you invest in yourself as a coach, and you be willing to listen to those who've been doing it much longer and more experience, and who are giving back to the sport, into the field of coaching young minds and teaching them the proper way how to play their position, and play the sport, and doing their job, and trusting that their teammates will do their job, and how you encourage the young men and young ladies to be good teammates, good leaders, right? Be a family. We don't always have to deal with dysfunction all the time. We can change and work on some things, and stop that dysfunction on our families and in our household, on our teams, our teams that we play with, so we can win games that we should be winning, and perform like we should be performing. And so, for those of you who want to earn a scholarship opportunity, these are some things that you need to make sure you invest in as parents, making sure that your person is in a healthy organization with good coaches that are going to teach them the proper techniques, and not show favoritism just to their kids or their friends' kids, or whatever the case may be, that they're really buying in and looking to develop every young boy and girl, whether it's their own child or not, right? That's what should be happening. But there's a lot of that favoritism, foolishness that goes on, that needs to stop, right? It's not just your kid that needs to be developed. Every kid out there needs to be developed whose parents takes the time to bring them out there and pay that fee. They're trusting you to do your job. And if you decide that you want to do that job, then take it serious and show your love for the game 24/7 by doing the kids a great service, by making sure that they are well prepared, well coached, and disciplined, and teach them not to let the coach talk to the referee. It's not that they can't ask questions, because they definitely can't ask a question, but they shouldn't be talking back to a ref, or telling a ref, "Oh, you missed a call," and all these different things of that nature. That's not good for the game at all. So let's teach the kids respect, and in order to teach that respect, you as a coach and parent need to conduct yourselves accordingly. All right. I heard a mom yesterday yelling, telling the kid, because the kid got slung down. It wasn't a horse collar. The kid got grabbed on their back shoulder by the jersey, not the neck, not the middle of the neck, and he wasn't drugged back. He wasn't pulled back or anything. He just got twisted and slung around out of bounds, and that's football. And if you as a parent can't deal with your kid being tackled that way, because it's going to happen. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't dirty. The kid was falling down, but still had the boy by the jersey. And as he was falling down, he was able to sling the kid out of bounds by grabbing his jersey still. Then the mom wanted to proceed and tell them to hurt the kid that did it. I'm like, that's totally out of line. And if any of those coaches on that team should have addressed that parent not to ever do that again. Tell some kids to hurt another kid. You might need to be dismissed, not the kid, but the parent, for a time period until they change, and understand we're not going to other kids out here to hurt another kid. That's totally out of line. And so let's make sure as parents you don't do things like that or say things like that to tell a kid to, on your team or your child, or hurt another kid on another team because you thought the play was dirty. The play wasn't dirty. It was a normal football play where the kid got slung and tackled out of bounds, period. And it's disheartening when you see parents say craziness like that. That's not a love for the game at all. That's somebody that you don't even want to be a part of the game until they decide they're going to learn and do better. Right? And so that needs to be out of the game of football. And so as the organization, I would tell them you need to say something to that parent. Next time I hear them, I ref a game and hear that parent say something like that, I'll be saying something to the association, like, you need to deal with that. To the coaches, you need to deal with that parent. And not ever say anything like that out loud. Shouldn't be saying it at all. Definitely not out loud. For kids out here to hear a parent saying something like that, very malicious. And we don't need any of that in the game at all. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about was the UNLV quarterback with the name, image, and likeness. And I know a lot of people have a lot to say about that. I always keep my ears to the grind about different things to talk about on this podcast to go even more in depth about it and whatnot. So I'm gonna give my say about it. Whether you agree with me or not, that's totally up to you. You don't have to agree with me. But I know those of us who play college sports, before all this name, image, and likeness stuff has come about, because a lot of this was being discussed back in my day playing college sports. Okay, so we always heard these rumblings about it, and it was always being done. Guys were always getting recruited and being influenced to come to a certain schools, university across the country, being paid under the table. The NCAA knows all that stuff has always been going on. Some teams like SMU got the death penalty when they shouldn't have, because other teams in their conference or around the country were doing that same thing, and they knew it. And so to fast forward to where we are now, where it's legal now to give players, to pay players, I know the social media part was really just booming when it comes to recruiting. When my oldest son was in high school. And as I've shared on a recent podcast, if you don't have your young person as a parent monitoring their social media, or don't have them on social media, or at least Twitter, you're not helping them with their recruiting. You need to get on Twitter, because every college coach for every sport uses Twitter or use X to do recruiting. And your student athlete should be posting things in a respectful way of, trying to market themselves, brand themselves, all right, give some exposure to how good they are and their team and how good their team is. But definitely when it comes to recruiting, you want to put out, a highlight or a good video of yourselves so college coaches can see, because they're looking. There are better tools today to help you with your recruiting and to help you gain exposure, and not totally rely on just your high school coach, because your high school coach should be helping you as well, leading you and guiding you. But I know a lot of them don't, so I wouldn't be doing this podcast. Okay, that's just being real. That's just being 100. Okay, and so, the young man with UNLV decided to, he left Harvard or wherever he came from the East Coast to the West Coast to Nevada, Las Vegas, whether it was a written contract or verbal contract. It was understood that this kid was going to get paid a certain amount of money a month because he was coming from the East Coast and moving himself all the way to the West Coast. He probably had some other options as well, but he decided this may have been the best option. And it worked out for him, where he had the team 3-0. And I'm sure UNLV probably didn't expect they were going to be 3-0. Now they're 4-0. But I'll get on to that later on this. But a lot of people were saying, the kid was greedy, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And, I can't stand the fact that people always want to blame the athlete first, or just blame the athlete. The NCAA knew years ago that eventually they were going to have to do name, image, and likeness and pay some players in college. You better believe, as many years as this has been going on, and they know this has been going on under the table, and they knew that at some point, especially as technology has gotten better with these video games and all these other things, the NCAA knew that at some point they were going to have to give in and allow this to happen. And since they did know that, they should have done a better job in coming up with some sort of pay scale, some sort of format. They had time to do this all these years. And don't sit up here and tell me an athlete is greedy when the NCAA has made multi-billions of dollars years of through college sports, okay, off athletes. And athletes, especially when it comes to football and basketball and even soccer, but every sport, kids are taking a risk, and we want to take that risk. And don't tell me that a scholarship is equivalent to the money that's coming in with football and basketball. Then if that's the case, you don't know enough. You're just a fan. You haven't done enough research to know how much money has been made in college with the NCAA and the colleges and universities. People can always make their numbers look like they're not making money. They know how to do those kind of things to make it look like they're not making money. If they're not making money, they wouldn't be putting up stadiums. They wouldn't be putting up science buildings, business buildings, because through football and basketball mainly, the reason why you might see a medical building, another building, not just because alumni is giving money, because money has been made through the sport of football and basketball, especially if there's been you're very successful. And some of these schools have been around for over 100 years, right? I'm at a school right now to where our endowment, because we're the youngest state university in North Carolina, we don't have endowment funds big like some of our sister schools that have been around over 100 some years and have very successful athletic programs compared to my state university here. They have huge endowment funds, and people tend to give more when you have successful athletic programs like football and basketball that have been successful in business. They tend to donate money, not just to athletics, but to the general body. And also remember, when these athletes get named players of the game, and they win, and money is awarded to the university, it doesn't go to athletics. It goes to the general scholarship fund. It means that money goes to kids who aren't sacrificing. They're just students, and they're not sacrificing on a football, basketball, lacrosse, hockey field, hockey ice, field hockey, hockey ice, any sport, soccer. They're not making that sacrifice and working hard in the classroom and in their sport. But when these kids are awarded money on behalf of, and it goes on behalf of the university, it does not go to, by rule, it cannot go strictly to the sports program. It has to go to the general scholarship fund. So that means students are getting scholarship money because of their sports programs are being successful in raising money and being awarded when they play on TV and whatnot. And you have Northwestern Mutual or Allstate giving money to the winning team or to the players of the game. That money goes to the general scholarship fund. And so this is why I say, don't sit up here and say that quarterback at UNLV was greedy. No, he wasn't. He was told that he was going to get a certain amount of money, and he held them to what they said. And I said on a podcast months ago that a lot of these contracts or NIL opportunities at the colleges now are based off what you do as an athlete, your statistics. A lot of these NIL deals are based on that. And so this kid probably, with his NIL deal and agreement, superseded what they expected. And he expected them to continue to give them that $3,000 a month or whatever else it was that he was told he was going to give, and they stopped. So he was not wrong for shutting it down and deciding that he would go play somewhere else next year and not lose his red shirt, since he had graduated and was a graduate student at UNLV, and he showed his worth. He superseded. He over delivered. He under promised and over delivered. He had them 3-0, which means if they continue to do well, he started that team out well. I know, and I say this to some players. Sometimes when you're getting recruited and you're playing against a team that has some heavy recruits on the team, some kids that are being heavily recruited, you better take that as your opportunity to ball out and get some exposure and get noticed, especially. And that was always my mindset when I was growing up, and what I told kids that I coached, like, hey man, we're playing against such and such today, and there's about 2 or 3 guys on that across that other sideline that are getting heavily recruited, and there's some recruiters here. Here's your opportunity to get some exposure. Here's your opportunity to shine some light on yourself and ball out. so they find out who you are. And so in these situations, like this UNLV quarterback, I say to people, sometimes when an athlete makes a certain decision, for you as another athlete, it opens a door up for you to do what you need to do, and you better make the best of it. Or if you make a bad decision, or not bad decision, or whatever decision you make is going to open up a door for somebody else to step in. And you better make sure when you make that decision, it's the best decision that you made for yourself, and hopefully it pans out for you. Right? So with that said, with this quarterback deciding to not continue to play at UNLV because they didn't keep their promise of his NIL agreement of paying $3,000 a month, it opened the door up for the other QB. Where they shredded, UNLV shredded with Fresno State, I think it was yesterday. I mean, they beat the blocks off of them yesterday, but it gave this other quarterback, of course, there's going to be some light shined on him now because the drama around his original starting quarterback leaving the school. So everybody's going to want to see, well, what the backup quarterback's going to look like. What is he going to do? Well, he showed what he was worth. He took his opportunity with this quarterback leaving and made the best of it, and beat Fresno State, beat the blocks off Fresno State yesterday, 50 something or whatever it was. You know, I don't know if Fresno State scored, but at the time I saw the score, 40 or 50 something to nothing or something like that when I was watching something crazy like that. So that young man that's taking over for UNLV, he got his opportunity to show what he's made of. That quarterback that left, that transferred in, he's going to probably give himself an opportunity because he showed that he could come from Ivy League football and come to a higher level or better competitive Division I program at UNLV and take them to being 3-0. So somebody's going to give him a shot because he's proved his worth. But he's not wrong. Don't vilify the young man for saying he want to go play somewhere where somebody's going to keep their agreement, right? Keep their name, image, and likeness agreement and uphold their agreement. But don't blame him. Blame the NCAA for not taking care of business, so this stuff wouldn't happen to college sports. Now, to me, there's a lot of parity going on with college football. It's great. I love it, right? And we knew that some of this stuff was going to even out. Some of these schools, there's teams getting upset that you didn't think was going to win. You know, Florida State is struggling. Hopefully they'll get it together, and I think they will because, hey, it's Florida State, and they're going to draw some players, and they're going to, you know, whether if that coach can stay there and keep his job, hopefully he'll get a chance to turn it around. If not, somebody come in and get it, you know, get it where it needs to be. I'm sure it will eventually. It's not going to stay Florida State alumni, you know, they're not going to put up with Florida State looking bad all these years. You know, they're gonna get it turned around. They're gonna find somebody to do it for them, whether it's that coach there and he helping with NIL and to get some better transfer kids in there. And recruit some high school, some of the best talent to decide to come to Florida State and not go somewhere else, right? Because maybe you give them a good NIL name, image, and likeness deal to want to say, yeah, I'll come to Florida State and help turn the program around, get it back to prominence, right? So, so I'm just telling you, don't vilify the quarterback at UNLV for deciding that he wants to leave because these guys didn't keep their, you know, you blame UNLV for not keeping their agreement, and they know what their agreement was to this young man, to this quarterback, and they know they didn't keep their agreement. So don't make him look bad. So I'm just giving you my part as a former college athlete who knows whose fault it really should be. He's not greedy. The quarterback is greedy. You made a promise. You made a contract agreement. You're not upholding that. I'm holding you to it. And to not hurt his status of being able to go play somewhere else, because he may not be able to make the pros. So he's trying to, hey, get what he can get before he loses any more eligibility to play college ball. And I don't blame him one bit. It's a business decision. It's always been a business decision in sports. Even back in my day, it's always a business decision. Ain't nothing new about that, about the college game. You know, I tell a guy who's playing running back right now today, you know, don't get worn out at your school if you're being run like crazy 30, 40 plus times a game, and the career for an NFL running back is not that long. You don't want to hurt yourself. So you need to be out of there by your junior year. You need to come out by your junior year. Why stay 4 years? Even if you do have a name, image, and likeness opportunity. Now, you know, you got to make a business decision. Do I want to get beat down in college to where I don't have a long career in the NFL if I have an opportunity? Right? So my advisement that if I had a son playing running back and he was a baller and he was one of the top, you know, running backs, or he was being looked at by the NFL, he was on their radar. I say, hey man, depending on how many carries they give you in college, every game, we may not decide to come back your senior year. We may need to jump to the NFL, regardless of name, image, and likeness, right? Because you're in the NFL, your name, image, and likeness money going to boost even more because you're in the NFL now. So I'm not going to get mad at that QB at UNLV or say he's greedy because he decided to hold UNLV accountable. And like I said, the NCAA could have put a halt to this kind of stuff from happening, which I think, it's still young with this name, image, and likeness and the new transfer portal atmosphere. So eventually I think it's going to work itself out. The NCAA going to have to, swallow its pride and do what it needs to do because they made money for years off athletes, jerseys at schools, jersey sales, paraphernalia, all kinds of things, billions of dollars. Okay, so yeah, it's new. This ain't the old way of college sports, and so things evolve and some things change. So we got to get used to the new way. And it just cause it's new don't mean it's bad. It just means you need to get used to it. Figure out how to navigate through it. Figure it out. So I just want to say my piece on that about the young quarterback at UNLV making his decision a business decision. And he made it, and he should be applauded for it and holding them accountable and also putting some light on what the NCAA should have done years ago to try to stop this kind of stuff from happening. They made some improvements. This year they decided they were going to not allow kids to negotiate during the season, NIL deals during the season, so they can, threaten to transfer because they want a better NIL deal. This is not what the UNLV quarterback was saying. He didn't say he wanted a better NIL deal. He said his NIL deal that they agreed upon was not being honored by the school. They stopped paying him that $3,000 a month like they agreed to. And I'm sure he had some stipulations in there, some performance things in his contract, that now UNLV is probably like, oh man, we're going to have to pay. We didn't realize this kid was going to come out and ball. Not saying we want to have something terrible, but we didn't know he was going to be this good or help us to be this good, be having a 3-0 start. Well, he did. And so that performance-based part of his NIL deal that you guys stopped honoring, he wasn't wrong. Like I said, the new rule this year that was incorporated, and I know the Oklahoma State head coach had a lot to do with it because I saw him interview on Pat McAfee show discussing it, about how kids were allowed to still negotiate name, image, and likeness deals during the season. Well, the NCAA changed that rule saying, hey, we got to focus on the game and not trying to have these agents who represent these kids' name, image, and likeness deals interfere with kids focusing on the season and performing and doing what they need to do. And so, which I agree with. That was something I think was positive, that no more negotiating with these coaches. Let's focus on football when the football season starts. Well, when football season starts now, as of this year and forward, no more negotiations, no more NIL negotiations are happening, which I think is good. Help the kids focus on playing ball, right? And not how much more money they could get kicked in. You're making good money. It's just, hey, go in negotiation when the season's over. Then you go and renegotiate, right? And so, but like I said, these are some things that NCAA is learning, not NFL, but the NCAA is learning that they should have done years ago, and they know they should have done it years ago. So don't be vilifying the athletes, any longer. But I know some people who are talking and vilifying athletes have no experience being a college athlete at all, none whatsoever. So they're not speaking from experience being a college athlete, right? And if you were a college athlete and you have an issue with it, then I question. Were you on full scholarship? What kind of home did you come from? Did your parents have a lot? Because I know most of the athletes I played with, we didn't come from homes that had where people had money. I lost my father at a young age. I had a single mom, instantly had a single mom because I lost my father to cancer. Right. So mom couldn't send my brother money every month while he was away in college. He had to work during the off season and holidays. And I had to do the same thing. Thankful I had an aunt that would send us some money sometimes. right, that would help my mom out with us sometimes. She would every now and then bless us and send something to us. But for the most part, we had to work during the summers while training for the next season. Have your work schedule set out so it didn't interfere with your workout schedule to get ready for the next season. And during Christmas and holiday breaks, we worked, whether it was spring break or Christmas. Not so much Thanksgiving, but Christmas, since it was a long break, we worked to earn money to help pay for things when I was in college. So it would have been nice to have a little stipend, to live off of. Mainly more than anything to eat, and then going to Iowa because I'm a Florida kid. I didn't know how to shop for winter clothes for Iowa until I got to Iowa. No idea, because Florida winter clothes aren't good enough for Iowa winters. Okay, totally different. It don't get cold in Florida like it does in Iowa, and it takes money. And Mom worked hard and did her best and do what she could to help us out. But I was also taught, get yourself out there and work as well and get you some money, because I'm old enough to get a job and I can figure out how to work schedule out around my workout schedule so I can be ready for the next college football season. So maybe some of you all who are talking against it and you said you played college sports, I'd like to know where you played college ball and whether you're on scholarship or how serious that you took it. But for those that I know who played college ball in my circle, none of us feel like that young man was wrong at all. People I've talked to that I played ball with, none that I know of. I haven't spoken to anybody that I played with that's disagree with what I'm saying, that the QB wasn't wrong. And it's not greed, it's a contract agreement that, why he left the East Coast to come out to the West, out West. And it's not cheap to do that. And he probably wanted to help his family come out there and see him play sometimes with that money. And so he was entitled to hold them accountable for it. But I hope it works out for him. And I hope UNLV, the backup quarterback, has gotten his chance to shine, and that he does, and he balls out, and he gives an opportunity to go to the playoffs by this young man who helped them start out 3-0 at the beginning of the season. And I'm sure his teammates, some of them probably aren't looking down about it. They're probably like, hey, I don't blame him, and I don't either. I'm thankful. I'm not envious. I'm glad these players are getting something now. I wish it would have happened during my time, but it didn't. But hey, I applaud, hats off to it happening now. Well, I won't keep you. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast about Pop Warner, coaches and parents and organizations, and the UNLV QB talk that has been going on. There was a lot of it this past week, but that's those are my thoughts. And I hope, you coaches out there who love the game 24/7, man, that you really, for those of you guys who do a great job, I applaud you and you keep doing it. Those of you guys who may not be doing as good of a job, man, just invest in yourself. I know you guys love the game as well. But if you do, you got to do a better job of showing it for these kids. Everybody can't be yelling and trying to give instruction to a kid and expect that he knows what everybody is saying at one time. Have better practices, have better coaching, the basics. When you have these kids during the week, make sure you have conversations with your parents that they shouldn't say anything about hurting another kid on another team. That's totally uncalled for and not to be tolerated. And as a coach, you need to deal with your parents who say stuff like that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Be sure you subscribe. Be sure you follow. Be sure you get my views up with these great videos. I got some more interviews that are going to be coming that I'm scheduling. Be sure, don't forget, you can get with offense, defense. You can Google offense, defense to find out about how to nominate your kid for the All-Star game on December 26th through 29th in Dallas Stadium in Irving, Texas, near downtown Dallas. You can nominate your kid from middle school age all the way up to high school. There's going to be from Thursday through that Saturday or Sunday, there are going to be several All-Star games being played at the different age groups. So get your videos in and nominate your athlete to get chosen for those All-Star games with offense, defense. So go to o-d.com, o-d.com, and get your kid nominated and get the videos out there. Okay. So I appreciate you joining the show. I look forward to you joining me next time on the podcast. There's going to be more things coming up I'll be sharing as we continue to progress throughout the season, fall season with sports going on. Catch some volleyball, catch some baseball as that wind down, and also these college football and the playoffs when they get started as the year progresses. So I look forward to you guys. Until next time, have a blessed rest of your weekend and blessed week, safe and healthy week. And let's continue to pray for those folks in Florida and other places that were affected by Hurricane Helene, and even up here in North Carolina in the Asheville area, in the mountains in Tennessee and Georgia and in North Carolina. So dedicate this show to them today. We're praying for you guys to get those things that you need to get restored. Okay. And so anything donating you can do, find a legitimate organization that is using that money to help those areas that were affected by Hurricane Helene. I appreciate you guys. Take care. Enjoy some Sunday football and Monday night football and Thursday. Take care. Peace out.